Revealed at my son's one Christmas dinner, a surprising auction for the old woman's heart. Joe stood in his cozy, weather-beaten kitchen, the icy blasts from outside crashing against the old clapboard walls, echoing the turmoil within him. Caleb sat at the table, eyes glued to the flickering Christmas lights that decorated the room, blissfully unaware of the weight draped over his father's heart. This would be their first Christmas dinner without Mary, a festivity drenched in shadows that were darkening by the second. As Joe gingerly placed the silverware on the table, memories of laughter and warmth submerged in the bitterness of loss crashed over him like relentless waves that he glanced at the worn photograph pinned magnetically to the fridge, a preserved moment of their family's joy. Mary's bright smile seemed to mock him as he prepared the meal, his mind racing. With each rotation of his wrist, the weight of the holiday, and the impending emptiness loomed larger. How could he celebrate when in every corner of the room, remnants of Mary's laughter still lingered? The school board's recent cuts clawed at him too, threatening the fragile foundation he built for Caleb, driving a wedge deeper into his already anxious psyche. Would he be able to provide for them? The piercing thoughts enveloped him, constricting like a vice. Amidst the chaos, May, his spirited mother, burst in with a twinkle in her eyes that had seen decades but were untouched by shadows. "Joe, I've got an idea. Let us auction that old necklace of mine. It'll help those in need." Her enthusiasm flickered like the candle flames against the harsh reality they faced. Yet Joe felt a pang of unease at the thought. The antique necklace represented more than just family heritage, it was linked to the memories of Mary that hung around his neck like a noose. While the intention was to gather hopes, whispers of doubt crowded Joe's mind. What would the town think? People in their small, fractured community would only see sentimentality, judgment cloaking their faces if they deemed it too much for mere decorum. Before tension could settle in full, an old college friend, Alex, unexpectedly called, buoyant and successful, his philanthropy glimmering like jewels against the backdrop of Joe's anxiety. They reminisced of shared dreams, but each compliment backfired, intensifying the distance between their paths. Joe found himself grappling with a snarl of emotions. He was happy for Alex, but each comment etched into the realization that Joe was in a fight for something far less glamorous. Would this banquet bring his family closer, or would it widen the divides that gnawed at the fabric of their community? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With Christmas Eve looming, Joe felt an eerie stillness wrap around him, heightening the fragile tension. He observed May's necklace further, complacency shattered, knowing it had transformed into a symbol of sacrifice and class, a tumultuous discussion waiting to unfold. Caleb's bright innocence faded with whispers of doubt crawling through the town, awakening deeper conversations about worth, family connection, and true generosity. Just as the tension burgeoned with desperation, an elder neighbor stood to voice a fraying misconception, his words cutting through the room like a dark omen. Joe held his breath, expecting to see May's spirit flicker under the weight of judgment, but before he could react, Caleb asked the simplest of questions, one that froze the air, shattering the silence. What would he say next? In that moment, Joe felt the insistent pull of their fractured destiny, teetering on the brink, his heart racing toward uncertainty. Joe's heart beat erratically as he processed Caleb's question, which hung heavily in the air like the gaudy decorations that adorned their home. It was a simple inquiry, yet it ignited a whirlwind of thoughts. Should he explain why selling May's cherished necklace felt like betraying the memory of Mary, or shield Caleb from the complexities that shadowed adult decisions? Each second compounded with indecision as he wrestled with the implications. Why do we have to sell Grandma's necklace? Caleb asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. That innocent inquiry cut deeper than any harsh criticism could. It forced Joe to confront his internal battle. Was the auction truly the solution to their problems, or merely a temporary fix that risked opening wounds yet to heal? Joe inhaled sharply, memories of Mary cascading through his mind like a turbulent river. She had always been the stronger vessel between them, managing life's storms with grace and conviction. He realized the chasm that had since opened, the spirit of her strength faded into the remnants of loss. Could he ever hope to capture that essence again? Sometimes we have to let go of things we hold dear, buddy, to help others, he finally murmured, each word feeling foreign in his mouth. Caleb's expression shifted, doubt cresting on his young features. May gently placed her hand on Joe's shoulder, grounding him in the moment. Joe, remember, it's not just about what we lose but what we can gain, the lives we can touch with this act. Her voice was steady, and he could feel her belief pouring into him. But doubt remained, swirling like the snow outside their window, obscuring his judgment. The auction could heal, or it could deepen the rift in their lives. As the night wore on, Joe busied himself with dinner preparations, trying to drown out the mental chatter that threatened to spiral again. Each chop of the knife against the cutting board echoed his inner turmoil. He remembered the excitement of past Christmases, the warmth of having Mary next to him with her laughter weaving through the room. The silence now was a mocking reminder of her absence. He questioned if this year would mark their descent into a holiday marred by sorrow. Would Caleb even remember these days as joyous? What are we doing after dinner? Caleb's voice pierced through the fog of Joe's thoughts, drawing his gaze toward the boy's hopeful expression. Can we go see Christmas lights after? Can we bring Grandma too? The boy's innocence thrummed within Joe, igniting something dormant. He didn't want to crush Caleb's spirit but felt an urgency to ground their reality. Well, Grandma will be there in spirit, son. The weaker part of him wanted to cave in, to allow imagination to fill the void left by Mary, but he couldn't hide from the truth. The flicker of candlelight danced around the kitchen, casting shadows that mirrored the emotional conflict swirling within Joe. He could either dwindle in self-pity, trapped by grief, or rise up and redefine the essence of their family. The path forward was unclear, cloaked in negotiations of sentimentality versus practicality. What if selling the necklace could speak to a new beginning, an invocation of change? It was an unsettling thought. He felt a sudden surge of determination ripple through him. That determination needed to be tested. Choices would arise where he would have to confront his own limits head-on. The thought curled in the back of his mind, seeding agitation. What if the auction revealed more than just the necklace? What if it unveiled hidden depths they still could unearth as a family? Just as Joe began mulling over the possibilities, the doorbell rang, resonating through the stillness of the house. An unfamiliar flicker of excitement brushed against his nerves. Who could that be? Each ring of the bell felt more like a clarion call than a simple announcement. Could this unexpected visit be the catalyst for change in their fragile lives? Joe's gut tightened as he stood frozen, the doorbell's ring echoing like an unanswered question in his mind. He glanced at Caleb, whose eager anticipation seemed to spark a faint hope within him. Could the visitor change the tone of their evening, shift the direction of their lives? With a conscious breath, he approached the door, his palm dampening as he gripped the handle. What lay beyond the threshold? Friends, family, or an unforeseen stranger bringing news that could either paralyze or propel them forward? Opening the door revealed a figure he almost didn't recognize. It was Grandma May's neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, her frail frame made smaller by the thick shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The woman's presence carried with it a warmth that momentarily dispersed the chill in the air. "Hello, Joe," Mrs. Henderson greeted softly, her voice an ethereal melody that wrapped around him like a comforter on a cold night. "I brought something." She hesitated, an unexpected flicker of emotion in her blue eyes. Caleb peered from behind his father's leg, curiosity radiating from him like sunlight breaking through clouds. Joe motioned for the boy to step forward while his mind scrambled to understand this sudden intrusion. Mrs. Henderson produced a small, intricately wrapped parcel from her bag, offering it with slightly trembling hands. "What is it?" Caleb asked, eyes wide with wonder. Joe accepted the gift but hesitated to unwrap it, as if doing so could unleash a cascade of emotions he wasn't ready to face. "It belonged to Mary," Mrs. Henderson continued, her voice laden with grief bundled in nostalgia. "I thought it might bring you warmth today. She would have wanted you to have it." The name hit Joe like a punch to the gut. Mary. Always the catalyst in his life, even in her absence. What could this gift reveal? Would it challenge him? Or would it offer solace amidst the storm? As Caleb tugged at the wrapping, the paper crinkled beneath their fingers, and Joe felt waves of nostalgia hit him. Memories of Mary enveloped him, a vivid tapestry of laughter, shared stories, and silent moments of understanding. Each layer he pulled away brought him closer to a bittersweet intersection of despair and hope. Inside lay a delicate ornament, a small glass heart, seemingly fragile yet imbued with a profoundly protective essence. Etched on its surface was an inscription, a promise Mary had believed in firmly: love never fades. The sight of it stirred a tumult of emotions within Joe. The heart had been tucked away, waiting for him, holding a part of Mary that he hadn't realized he longed for until that moment. A reminder that even amidst the sorrow of losing her, the love remained. "Can we hang it on the tree?" Caleb's innocent plea beckoned Joe to redirect his thoughts. Yes, perhaps this was not only about loss but about honoring the past and forging new traditions. He found his voice, feeling steadier and more assured than moments before. "Yes, of course, Caleb. We can hang it together," he replied, his determination crystallizing. As they gathered around the tree, Joe felt the warm spirit of family knitting them closer. Each ornament they placed was punctuated with memories, but now it felt like a collaborative act of creation. Perhaps in the sharing of both light and darkness, they could find a new rhythm together. Just as the last ornament settled into its place, a knock sounded at the door once more, an insistent interruption to their burgeoning peace. Joe shot a glance towards Caleb, who met his gaze with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The visitor was back, but with new purpose. What more could this night hold for their fragile family? Taking a deep breath, Joe understood that their journey of rediscovery was just beginning to unfold, and it would demand courage in the moments of uncertainty that lay ahead. Joe felt a surge of trepidation as he wiped his hands on his jeans, the warmth of the moment swiftly replaced by the cool air that seeped in with Mrs. Henderson's tentative knock. It wasn't just the unexpected arrival that unsettled him, it was what came next. The promise of the fragile heart ornament seemed overshadowed by the new presence that loomed beyond the door, a potential upheaval of their freshly found intimacy. "Should I get it, Dad?" Caleb whispered, his eagerness barely contained. Joe nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. This was not merely about replying to a knock, it felt like a test, an exploration of boundaries that were both familiar and uncharted. As he turned the handle, Joe readied himself for whatever revelation awaited them. The door swung open, revealing Mr. Parker, the local auctioneer, standing there with an air of purpose. The dull glow of the porch light cast long shadows, accentuating the seriousness etched across his face. "Evening, Joe. Sorry to intrude, but I need to talk to you about something urgent," Mr. Parker said, his voice steady, weighted with formality. There was no preamble, no easing into the conversation. Joe's heartbeat quickened, the air heavy with uncertainty. "Can it wait just a moment?" "We're in the middle of something," Joe pressed, glancing back at Caleb, whose innocent curiosity shifted towards confusion. There was a time when Joe would have dismissed this kind of interruption, but now it gnawed at him, feeling intrusive, as if it could tear apart the precious moment he shared with his son. "It's important about Mary," Mr. Parker continued, focusing entirely on Joe. Instantly, the world around them blurred. The name struck him deeply, a vivid reminder of grief intertwined with hope. He stepped aside, allowing Mr. Parker to enter, watching Caleb shift uneasily at the presence of an unfamiliar adult in their intimate space. "Come in, then," Joe said, a hint of resignation threading through his voice. They moved into the living room, where the gentle twinkling lights of their Christmas tree now felt like a backdrop to an impending storm. Mr. Parker wasted no time. He pulled out a folder, opening it to reveal photographs of various items, rare collectibles, paintings, and one very familiar object. "I've been doing some estate work, Joe. I came across an auction listing for some of Mary's belongings," he explained, his eyes scanning Joe's face for reaction. "There's something here I believe you'd want back." As he held up an image of a shimmering glass piece, another heart, Joe felt his breath hitch. It was one he thought lost forever. A surge of regret and nostalgia clamored within him, demanding recognition. "How did you find this?" he asked, trying to maintain his composure. "It was accompanied by Mary's notes. She intended for it to go to you, but it never made it before." "Well, you know," Mr. Parker said gently, gauging Joe's reaction. "You can take part in the auction and reclaim what's yours." Caleb watched them, wide-eyed at the intensity surrounding the adult conversation, sensing something monumental was unfolding. Joe's mind spiraled, a confrontation between the longing to recover a piece of Mary's spirit and the practical implications of money and choice loomed large. Could he put forth the energy required to reclaim that part of their shared history? What's the auction date? Joe finally managed to ask, the urgency of the moment enveloping him in a whirlwind of decisions. His hands clenched tightly at his sides, the ground under him feeling unsteady. Mr. Parker shifted uneasily, holding Joe's gaze with a mixture of sympathy and professionalism. "In a week. You'll need to prepare." Among the bustle of emotions, a single thought pierced through: he had to fight for this. This was an opportunity not only to reclaim a cherished piece of the past but to dig into his own capacity for action, for decision-making that would propel them forward. As Mr. Parker detailed the particulars, Joe's mind shifted toward strategy, how he could navigate the competing demands of his heart and practicality. And as the thought coalesced, a deeper understanding dawned. It was more than an auction. It was about reasserting control over his life, redefining who he could become in this new chapter. Caleb's probing gaze brought him back, reminded that he was not merely a grieving man seeking closure, but a father crafting a path of resilience for his son. "Can we hang that heart on the tree before we talk more about this?" Caleb asked, his voice breaking through the heavy air, forcing Joe to confront the balance of the past with the future. With the two hearts at hand, Joe faced that intersection of newfound responsibility and revitalized hope. The challenge loomed large, but so did the possibility of change. Each choice now mattered, setting the tone for their future. As they moved, he felt the weight of the past lift slightly, but the impending auction dangled before him, a decision that would reshape not only his relationship with Mary's legacy but also his bond with Caleb. How would he prepare for this next battle over something so deeply personal? The realization came crashing down: this was only the beginning of a greater confrontation to reclaim what was lost. Next week will change everything, he thought, the gravity of his impending choices settling into the confines of his mind as their intertwined fates spiraled towards the unknown. The week unfurled before Joe like a tightly wound coil, every day hissing with apprehension and anticipation. He found himself oscillating between moments of clarity and waves of emotional turmoil. Each photograph of Mary's possessions that Mr. Parker had shared echoed in his mind, resonating with memories that were both cherished and painful, fragmented pieces of a life that once felt whole. Determination flooded Joe as he steered his thoughts towards the auction preparations, guiding his focus like a lighthouse through a foggy night. He sat at the old wooden table, cluttered with fundraising flyers and school projects, yet all that occupied his attention was a blank sheet of paper positioned stubbornly before him, awaiting a plan. The stakes felt impossibly high. This wasn't just about reclaiming a heart-shaped ornament, it was about taking ownership of his life and the legacy he yearned to build for Caleb. He leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a moment of honesty. The idea of fighting against the tide of grief, of stepping forth into the light, both exhilarated and terrified him. What would reclaiming that heart truly mean? Would it stir old memories to create new, or merely open wounds that were finally starting to heal? He grasped these thoughts tightly, aware that a decision loomed on the horizon like thunderheads gathering for a storm. Caleb entered, a picture of youthful exuberance, carrying a stack of neatly folded clothes. "Dad, can we make cookies this weekend? For the auction?" The innocence of his son's request hit Joe squarely in the chest. It was a subtle reminder that amidst the chaos, there were more fragile yet significant traditions that needed tending. As Joe set aside the scattered papers and bound his focus on Caleb, he realized that every choice he made echoed beyond himself. Could he genuinely turn this auction into something more than just a transaction? Could it bridge the past with the future, weaving the threads of loss into a tapestry of resilience? He voiced his commitment. "Yes, let us do it together. Cookies and everything." The warmth of his son's smile ignited something in him, an ember of hope. Perhaps this effort could turn the bidding process into an opportunity not just for material recovery but as a way of honoring Mary's memory and integrating it into their evolving lives. In preparing for the auction, Joe could transform the event from a mundane monetary exchange to a cherished familial moment. This would be about connection, even amidst the layers of sorrow. Joe spent the subsequent days gathering information, visiting local archives, and diving deeper into the auction world. He began to realize how resourceful he could be. The meticulous notes Mary had left behind became a wellspring of guidance, framing the history behind each piece as something that transcended time. The stories behind the items fueled his determination. He meticulously categorized them, drawing lines between memory and the present. This heart didn't signify death. It underscored the importance of living and loving every moment. Yet, as he harnessed his newfound resolve, Joe began to sense the opposing forces brewing within him. The specter of doubt crept into his peripheral vision, the fear that he could lose everything again, that reclaiming the heart could awaken ghosts he wasn't ready to face. He paced the living room, testing himself, probing what must be confronted and what could remain buried. Why does this matter? He mused aloud, wrestling with the intangible emotions at play. His voice faded into the stillness. Caleb strolled back into the room, sensing his father's turmoil. "What is wrong, Dad?" Joe took a breath. He needed to take control of his narrative. "Nothing, buddy. Just trying to figure some things out." But deep down, he recognized this would be his crucible, not just an auction, but a moment of truth. He needed to confront not only his past but to redefine it, to evolve into the man that Caleb needed now. As the day of the auction drew closer, the boundary between hope and anxiety became increasingly razor thin. What decision would he make when standing at that auction block, where emotional stakes ran high? Every penny bid would carry an unspoken weight. With the rising tension of conflict, Joe knew that the moment of reckoning was approaching. Would he find the strength within himself to emerge whole, or would he falter under the pressure? As he looked at Caleb, his heart raced, and the answer began to crystallize. In the stillness of the room, a single thought pierced through the haze. This isn't just an auction. It's a chance to reclaim the love that was never lost. The doubt shivered in the corners of his mind, but he clung to that glimmer of courage. He was ready to confront not only the past but to transform their shared futures. Little did he know how one bid could shatter barriers, for the path ahead was fraught with challenges. What would come to light at the auction might reshape everything they had thought they understood about loss and love. What secrets would the heart unveil? The day of the auction dawned, bright yet tremulous, casting a pale light over Joe's apprehension. He sat at the kitchen table, fingers tapping nervously against the wood as Caleb bustled around, excitedly icing cookies for their contribution. The aromas of vanilla and sugar hung in the air, blending with the tension knotting Joe's stomach. It felt surreal, stepping into a marketplace where the past was carved into every object up for bid. He had prepared meticulously, yet as the hour approached, a chasm of anxiety stretched wider. What if he failed? What if his efforts to reclaim that heart-shaped ornament collapsed? Memories of the preparations shadowed his mind, yet they weren't merely nostalgic, they became anchors for reflection, forcing him to confront the man he had been for so long and the man he aspired to be. A sudden ping from his phone jolted him into the present. It was a message from Mr. Parker, the auctioneer. "Looking forward to seeing you and what you bring. Remember, it's about the story these items carry." Joe reread the text, feeling its undercurrent unraveling the complex fabric of his apprehension. He could recount every story associated with the items he had chosen to present, but how could he ensure that each narrative resonated with others? Positioned against their past, these pieces were more than just relics. They were dialogues with loss, love, and life. "Hey, Dad. Help me with the sprinkles?" Caleb called, bubbling over with energy. Joe forced a smile, striving to mute his trepidation for the sake of his son. As he moved to assist, he caught a glimpse of Caleb's enthusiasm, which flickered like a beacon, urging him to lean into that light. "Sure, buddy," Joe replied, his voice steadier than he felt. As he poured colorful sprinkles, he glanced at the heart-shaped cookies, each one a testament to their joint effort. This is what mattered. Not merely the auction or the items, but the moments they created together. Yet, as they decorated, probing thoughts lingered. Could he translate his personal journey into something tangible for those attending? Joe envisioned himself edged out at the auction stage, knowing that the further he moved into that spotlight, the more vulnerable he would be. "Caleb, what do you think makes a story special?" he asked, hoping to glimpse childhood wisdom. Caleb pondered, sprinkling his cookie with a bit too much enthusiasm. "It has to be real. And it should be about people, like love and friendship. His son's words struck Joe deep, illuminating an angle he hadn't considered. The auction didn't have to be just about bidding, it could transform into a celebration of Mary's legacy, inviting others into that shared warmth. It wasn't solely about reclaiming material items, it was about sharing the heart behind each artifact. With renewed resolve, he set aside his fears and focused on communicating the uniqueness of each item, how they wove the narrative of a life filled with love and joy. He could share how Mary cherished each piece, how they represented her exuberance for life and the family they forged together. As the time to leave approached, Joe felt a shift within himself. Yes, the taste of fear still lingered, but now, alongside it stood an emerging courage. He was ready to step onto that auction floor, to confront the ghosts, to break free of his past shackles. He would pour himself into his storytelling, inviting everyone to partake in a legacy that could never be extinguished. All right, let's head out. Cookies in hand, Joe announced, taking a deep breath to fortify himself. But just as they prepared to leave, a knock echoed through the door, halting them. Joe's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be at this moment? He exchanged a glance with Caleb, who looked equally curious. The door opened to reveal a familiar silhouette, a figure clad in shadows, an old acquaintance with ties to both his past and the narrative he was about to unfold. What are you doing here? Joe's voice edged with shock, as a cloud of uncertainty settled between them. In that charged moment, a new wave of conflict surged through Joe. What revelations would this unexpected guest bring? The pieces of his life, past and present, were on the verge of intertwining in ways he could never have anticipated. Joe's pulse quickened as he stared at the silhouette standing at the threshold of his home. The figure stepped forward into the light, revealing a face he hadn't seen in years. Lisa, Mary's childhood friend, and a part of a past he had managed to keep at bay for too long. Her presence was a jolt, a reminder that unresolved stories still lurked in the shadows of memory. Joe, she said softly, her voice tinged with both familiarity and caution. I heard about the auction. I wanted to see you. Why now? Joe's words tumbled out sharper than intended. Anger and confusion mingled in his chest. Why had she chosen this moment, a moment he had been painstakingly preparing for, a moment in which he had finally begun to reconcile his heartbreak? I saw the items you were bringing, things that were special to Mary, Lisa responded, a hint of sadness crossing her features. I felt I owed it to her and to you. Can we talk? For a brief moment, Joe hesitated. The door loomed between them like an invisible line separating his past from the uncertain future he was trying to claim. He felt the soothing weight of Caleb's hand resting on his arm, his young presence a reminder of what lay ahead. All right, Joe finally said, stepping aside to let her in. But it's not the best time. Once inside, the familiar yet faded scent of Mary's jasmine perfume enveloped them, mingling with the lingering essence of baking cookies. There was an undeniable weight in the air, a tension that demanded to be addressed. Joe, I'm sorry for how everything fell apart those years ago. I wanted to come here and see if maybe we could reconnect, honor Mary's memory together, Lisa began, her voice faltering. Joe crossed his arms, visions of candid laughter and shared moments with Mary flooding back. Reconnect? After all this time, you just want to what, reminisce? It felt as if a dam holding back a cascade of unresolved feelings threatened to burst. Lisa took a deep breath, steadying her resolve. I didn't realize the gravity of what you went through. I left town and buried myself in my life, but now, it feels wrong not to acknowledge everything you've lost. Joe's anger softened a notch. Her acknowledgement of their shared grief unearthed a flicker of yearning. You didn't know I was struggling. I was just trying to make sense of it all. I've seen the items you're bringing, Lisa spoke candidly, as if understanding his pain would lower his defenses. Each piece carries a story. Stories that need to be shared and honored, not just sold off. We could do that together. For a split second, Joe pondered the proposition. Would this stranger, linked to his past, be a gentle hand guiding him through the shadows or merely another complication to his already tumultuous life? He was intrigued as well as wary. I'm not sure sharing is what I want right now, Joe admitted, exposing the vulnerability tucked beneath his emotional armor. I've spent years keeping that buried. Lisa approached cautiously. But what if uncovering those memories could help you reclaim something important? Not just the items but the essence of Mary's spirit that she infused into them? He mulled it over, wrestling with the idea that perhaps his estrangement from the past had held him captive. Her presence could either be a destructive force that tore open old wounds or a crucial step toward healing. Well, the auction is tonight, he responded slowly, testing the waters. You want to join us? Make this a tribute rather than a mere transaction? Absolutely, she replied, a sliver of relief evident in her eyes. As they clashed and mingled emotions and expectations, the unease between them began to dissolve into something new, a tentative partnership birthed from shared loss. Caleb darted back into the room, eyes glimmering with excitement. Are we going to talk about cookies or the auction now? Both, Joe said, feeling a more profound purpose nudging at his core. Yet, just as he settled into the reality of collaborative storytelling, a knock resonated again through the door, stalling the moment's newfound warmth. The past refused to be silenced, revealing waves of conflict yet to confront. Who could that be? Joe wondered, apprehension creeping in. Every passing moment seemed to remind him that this auction night was shaping up to reveal far more than he ever intended. His heart raced at the thought of even deeper complications unraveling, standing on the precipice of a personal storm. What else remained hidden, lurking in the shadows of this defining moment? What truths had he yet to accept? The knock echoed again, more persistent and urgent, each sound sending fresh waves of tension coursing through Joe's veins. He glanced at Lisa, her expression a mixture of sympathy and curiosity, as if she, too, sensed the shifting currents of the evening. The unease prickled at his skin. He wasn't prepared for whatever awaited him at the door. Stay here with Caleb, Joe instructed, making a move toward the door, a gnawing worry clenching at his gut. He didn't quite understand what compelled him to open the door. Apart from a blend of duty and instinct to confront whatever was on the other side, the door swung open to reveal an unexpected figure. Danny, Mary's brother, someone he hadn't seen since the funeral. Joe's heart sank. The weight of their estrangement loomed between them like an imposing wall. Danny's eyes were red-rimmed and filled with a mix of pain and urgency. Joe, he said, his voice trembling slightly, I need to talk to you. Now? Joe's tone carried an edge, the abruptness of this intrusion disrupting the fragile balance of the evening. Yet he felt the gravity of Danny's presence, an unspoken bond encased in grief. Can't this wait? Not if you want answers, Danny said, stepping into the doorway as if he had made up his mind. I came here to say things we should have said a long time ago. The words struck Joe like a physical blow, bringing with them a flood of memories that he thought he had neatly tucked away. Remnants of shared laughter, late-night conversations, and a promise to one another floated unbidden into his mind, all overshadowed by the bitterness of blame that had festered since Mary's death. Can't we just focus on the auction? Joe replied numbingly, desperate to steer clear of the inevitable conflict. But the very mention of the auction seemed to ignite something within Danny. I wish you would have invited me to be part of that, he said, frustration leaking into his tone. You have no idea how hard it has been for me to watch you do this alone. Joe clenched his fists at his sides, the words resonating deeper than he wanted to admit. Over the years, he had prided himself on building a life where he did not rely on others, where vulnerability was avoided like a poison. Yet with every confrontation, the weight of his isolation became harder to carry. Why didn't you reach out sooner? He countered, the anger rising in him, not so much directed at Danny but reflecting the chaos of his own emotions. You just disappeared after she died, like you were done with us, with family. I was hurting, Joe. Danny shot back, his voice reverberating in the tension-thick air. We all were. But I found out things about Mary the first wish I'd known at the time. Things that could change how you view everything she left behind. And you deserve to know, he added, visibly shaken. This assertion hit Joe like a thunderclap, disorienting him in ways that sent tremors through his carefully constructed facade. What do you mean? He demanded, fear and anger intertwining constructively in his chest. What have you been keeping from me? Danny took a breath and stepped forward, lowering his voice. There's a reason those items hold so much meaning. There are stories she wanted shared, secrets she took to the grave, and it's not too late to understand her life fully. Joe's mind raced, caught between the refusal to confront painful truths and the insistent pull of discovery. Could facing the ghosts of the past be the key to attaining closure? Would understanding Mary's life, her trials and triumphs, help him finally let go? Or would it only deepen his own scars? Caleb's innocent voice broke through. "Dad, are we going to talk about cookies or not?" With that innocent interruption, the unseen weight of the conversation revealed itself. This was not just about Mary anymore. It was about healing fractures woven into the very fabric of his family, and about embracing the challenge of reconciling different memories against the singular reality of loss. "Maybe it's time we all shared those stories," Joe said, surprising even himself. The resolve stirred within him. A slow awakening after years of suppressing his past. Sharing grief together could forge a new path rather than simply repeating the due process of the auction, yet he recognized one brutal truth amid this revelation. Danny's words would lead to deeper conflicts than expected, confrontations that could unravel more than just memories attached to items. Joe braced himself as the emotional storm loomed on the horizon, aware that the night ahead was only beginning to unfold. What other shocking revelations awaited him, and how would he confront the truths about Mary that had remained cloaked in shadows for so long? Joe stood at the threshold, uncertainty coiling tightly around him as he locked eyes with Danny. The air pulsed with unspoken tension, an ancient rift now threatening to be breached. It was in these moments that realization pierced through the chaos. Confronting his grief would demand more than mere acknowledgement. It would require vulnerability and courage he had long evaded. "Let's talk," he finally said, the words escaping his lips with a mix of resignation and resolve. He felt Lisa's gaze on him, a tether back to the present, urging him to navigate this tumult with care. Danny stepped inside, the heaviness of his emotional baggage almost palpable. Joe led him to the living room, where the flickering glow of the fireplace offered warmth, but failed to thaw the chill in his heart. He gestured for Danny to sit, but the other man chose to pace, his movements jittery, accentuating the restless energy between them. "Before we go any further," Joe began, "I need to be clear. I'm not ready to dig into the past. Not tonight." "Then when?" Danny's tone was almost pleading, but it quickly morphed into anger. "Ignoring it won't make it disappear. The real challenge lies in confronting the truth." With each word, Joe felt a familiar tug of defensiveness. But perhaps this time, he could harness that defensiveness into a powerful tool for change. "What do you want from me, really?" he asked, leaning forward. He was tired of shifting shadows and unanswered questions. "I want you to realize Mary was more than the sum of her struggles. There were parts of her life she lived in silence, and they may unravel the way you see both her and yourself," Danny revealed, his voice cracking under the weight of old resentments and freshly discovered secrets. The confession echoed in Joe's mind. What had he missed by only viewing her through the lens of their shared tragedy? What might be hidden behind her smile or her moments of silence? It was difficult to wrestle with the idea that there was so much more to Mary, so much that could alter how he viewed her absence. "Why should I trust you?" Joe shot back, the anger and hurt once again surfacing viciously. "You left me alone in this grief." "I get that it hurts," Danny replied, stopping to look Joe in the eye with sincerity. "And I'm sorry for that. I was coping in my own way, but what I found could help heal this divide if you're willing to hear me out." The word heal hit Joe like a spark, igniting his weary spirit. For far too long, he had avoided the discussions, the unearthing of memory after memory, all to protect himself. Perhaps that was why he had felt so isolated. It was his choice not to engage openly with his pain. But the thought of healing brought a flicker of hope. Joe took a deep breath. "Fine. Tell me." "I found letters," Danny confessed, the urgency rising once again in his voice. "Letters that reveal parts of her life she never shared with anyone, even you. All those times she seemed distant or preoccupied. They're in there. It's like a key to the life she lived alone. A chance for both of us to reconnect on a level that transcends just memories of loss." As the gravity of Danny's words settled, shadows of doubt and curiosity collided within Joe. Could understanding these hidden truths lead to unlocking his own emotions? And if he did choose to dive deeper, would he risk setting off another wave of pain? I need to think about this, Joe finally uttered, unsure of how to process the unfolding confrontation. Danny nodded solemnly, stepping back as if sensing Joe's inner turmoil. The silence stretched, leaving room for reflection. Could they truly reconcile their fractured relationship and the memory of Mary? Could this exploration lead to emotional awakening, or would it push him further into darkness? The reality was raw and daunting, yet Joe recognized the moment as potential. Time was ticking, and he felt an urgency to confront his past head-on. Caleb's playful voice shattered the stillness again, reminding Joe of the present, yet this time the innocence felt different. It carried the weight of possibility. With a newfound intensity, he fixed his gaze on Danny. "Let us do this. But you need to know I may not like everything I hear." Danny swallowed hard, but the flicker of resolve in his eyes matched Joe's own. "Then let us meet again. But this next talk, it won't just be about Mary. It has to be about us." As Joe braced himself against the emotional whirlpool on the horizon, he wondered what truths would emerge from the depths. What revelations could transform their shared pain into a conduit for healing? What would they ultimately discover about themselves amid the wreckage of grief? The night ahead would not simply unfold, it would challenge Joe to grapple with aspects of himself he had long since buried. And as the warmth of the fire began to fade, he realized that he had to face more than just an auction. He had to face the labyrinth of his heart. Joe stood in the heart of the auction room, surrounded by the bright yet overwhelming spectacle of items displayed under the polished lights. It was the culmination of a week filled with uncertainty and vulnerability, illuminated by the essence of both past and future. He felt a palpable intensity as he prepared not only to bid on the heart-shaped ornament that symbolized his late wife Mary but to reclaim his own narrative, a life mixed with grief and resilience. As he swept his gaze over the familiar artifacts tied to cherished memories, his heart raced. Each moment in this space thrummed with the possibility of healing, the chance to weave together the fragments of loss and love. With his son Caleb by his side and newfound ally Lisa supporting him, Joe strived to channel the combined energy into their mission of honoring Mary. This year marked a turning point he never anticipated. The notion of stepping into the auctioneer's spotlight instilled a sense of dread but also excitement. No longer did he view Mary's belongings strictly through the lens of loss. These items stood as testaments to their life together. He would confront each bid with the understanding that every dollar spent also told a story, one of love that transcended even the darkest of shadows. As the auction commenced, Joe found his footing. He stood in front of the gathered crowd, sharing snippets of Mary's vibrant spirit that remained alive in each piece he showcased. The stories resonated deeply, weaving through the audience like an invisible thread of connection. This was no longer a transaction, it was a revival of memories, a celebration of everything she had cherished: her artwork, her laughter, and the love she poured into their family. "I believe in honoring the past," Joe spoke, feeling the convergence of his heart and mind finally align. "Let us not just bid, let us transform this event into a living tribute to my wife, Mary." As he made his way to the podium, he felt the weight of his hesitations lift, buoyed by whispers of encouragement and support. When it came time to bid on the heart-shaped ornament, the physical embodiment of his emotional journey, he raised his paddle, surrounded by gasps and nods of recognition. Each increment signified not merely the desire to reclaim an object but to affirm the commitment to his family, the legacy of love forged through both joy and sorrow. With each upward bid from others, a swell of determination replaced the tightness wrapped around his chest. The numbers rose, climbing higher with unexpected momentum. Just when he thought he might retreat under pressure, he locked eyes with Caleb. The innocence and love reflected in his son's gaze propelled him to push back against doubt and fear. In a moment that felt both surreal and electric, Joe made the final bid, an act of triumph that resonated not just through the room but within his very soul. The gavel echoed. He had done more than reclaim the necklace, he had stepped fully into his own power as a father and a man, ready to rewrite the narrative of loss that had defined him for far too long. Cheers erupted as he accepted the ornament, its brilliance capturing the light in a way that mirrored his renewed sense of purpose. This singular moment encapsulated transformation. It signified not just a victory over grief but the embrace of hope and possibility. As he descended from the stage, Joe felt alive, solid in his newfound confidence. He was no longer the man weighted down by desperation. He had proven capable of moving forward. The shadows of Mary's absence still loomed large, but they no longer shrouded his path. Caleb rushed into his arms. The warmth of his embrace felt like the soft promise of tomorrow. "Did we win, Dad?" He beamed with excitement and pride. "Yes, buddy. We not only won a piece of our past, but we forged a path toward our future," Joe whispered, holding his son tight. The night unfurled ahead of them, brightened under the Christmas lights, filled with the echoes of laughter shared. His newfound alliance with Lisa and reconnection with Danny transformed the event into not just a tribute to Mary, but a chance to introduce new traditions and stir the embers of family bonds into flames once more. In this journey of healing, Joe had discovered profound strength, forged through acceptance and understanding. He stood at the brink of a fresh chapter, embracing life with solid confidence, recognized competence, and an established position as a devoted father. There was triumph in knowing that every scar carried a lesson, and in sharing those lessons, he had honored Mary while resurrecting the spirit of connection, one heart, one story, and one transformative journey at a time. Now, realizing how vital this journey had been, Joe felt a surge of urgency and clarity for all who had witnessed this metamorphosis. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm. Your support truly matters. Comment below your reactions and theories about this journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion.